All right, we're at the, or underneath the F350, connecting the coolant lines, the E40D transmission, and the fitting on the rear. If I can get my light adjusted, this is the, hang on, this should be the return, but let me double check. Yeah, this is the return. The feed is up here. I didn't have to do anything with it. It feeds from here to the filter, and then back from the filter it goes to here, and then it goes up to the radiator feed or receiving port on the radiator. Then the radiator feeds it to the auxiliary, and then the auxiliary feeds it back to here. So it filters on the way out, not on the way back. So I just got to clean this fitting up a little bit more, see. And then I've got my stubs ready. I taped everything on the end just to keep them clean until I get them in place, because there's going to be scraping and debris and everything else happening. And I got the PTFE Teflon on there. I've got the larger 1/2-inch hose split, so I'll put that piece in this area because of the exhaust, and then various clamps and zip ties just to hold the split hose onto the regular hose. So I'm gonna get some brake clean, which I didn't bring, and clean that fitting up, and then we'll get one on there. Well, what you didn't see was me taking a road trip for the last 45 minutes to get an O-ring, because this fitting that goes here is not just a fitting, it's a check valve, and there's an O-ring, I don't know if you can see it, set inside. So the old O-ring that was in here was completely deteriorated, nothing but little pieces. So here we go. Trip into town, stopped at a local transmission shop. They had a couple O-rings they could give me, didn't charge me, so that was good. But still, 36 miles later. So I'll get this in here, get tightened up. And I'll be back in a second. Okay, I got the, what is it again? It's the return line connected. Got the check valve, got the new O-ring inside the check valve, got the flare nut, PTFE Teflon tape, got the hose on the other flared end with a clamp, and it's feeding up front, and it went through that funky hanger. So the next one I've got to do is the actual feed to the radiator line. But first I'm going to connect the other end of this one to the bottom end of the auxiliary cooler, and then we'll use the second piece. Well, I've changed my mind on that PTFE tape on the flare nuts. The more I thought about it, the more I decided it doesn't make much sense. And I'm not sure it's going to interfere, but it's not, the threads is not the sealing point. The sealing point is the crushing of the flare into the fitting. So they did not have tape on them when I took them off. So I'd read that online a couple places, and I decided to go the purest route. And although there was tape on the radiator flare fittings when I took it off, and it had been there for, I don't know, well over 10 years, so I went ahead and taped those back in. But on the other, all the other fittings, or the flare nuts, I decided I'm going to remove the tape that I'd previously put on it. On this point, it just like I said, it makes no sense to use it. So this is day 2. We'll see how far I get. All right, I'm underneath the Ford again, still connecting the lines, just from a different perspective. This is the bottom of the E40D transmission. This is the return line from the auxiliary cooler. And in the return line, this is a this valve here has a check ball to prevent pressure from flowing backwards. So inside this, underneath the flare nut, there is an O-ring, or there should be one anyway. When I took the original line out, that O-ring was completely disintegrated. It was just crumbling into parts. So I buzzed down to a transmission shop, and they gave me a couple for free. It's quite nice of them. And this is the original line. I just cleaned it up, double checked it for rust. There wasn't any. And then I've clamped the 5/16 diameter hydraulic line onto it. And like I said earlier, it's I think it's 300 psi, which is not going to be anywhere near how much this is holding. And then this line here, which is also basically a hydraulic line, this is going from the filter, or coming from the filter, and then going to the radiator as the feed line, or the outgoing, I don't know how else to say it. It's the fluids coming from the transmission, going through the filter, and then feeding into the radiator cooler. And this is that line. And the fitting for this is right here. I did the same thing. And it's cut off the original end so I could have some shape to guide me. And then it will be connecting there. And because of the shape of the stub here, it's going to hold the line high away from the exhaust pipes. But I'm also wrapping it with heater hose, zip tying it, and then I'll zip tie it up here with some of these other hose just to keep it away from any of these hot pipes. It's about the best I could do. I think that's going to work just fine. And if it doesn't, well, I guess I'll find out, and I can always put metal back on there. I'm just trying something a little bit different here. It's a little bit easier to deal with. I had to buy flaring tools, and of course the hose and everything else, which probably equated to about the same cost as the metal lines, even though the metal lines were a tad cheaper. But since I had to buy the tools, it kind of worked itself out to be the same. But I didn't have to spend a day or 2 days bending the pipe to match the original, because that would have just taken a very long time. And this way it gives you the capability of running the line wherever you need to possibly make it work a little bit better. And if you're wondering why this pan is so clean, well, I replaced this before we even left Arizona to come out to Florida. I probably replaced it in, I don't know, about 2010, 2011, and it's done really good. There might be a little bit of misting here, but I think it might be from the leak. So I'll clean it up and watch it over the next couple months as we drive it. That's all for now. Okay, final look from underneath. Hopefully you can follow the line here. Here's where the original feed line is. Like I said, going to the filter. I zip tied the heck out of everything in an attempt to keep it away from heat sources. So I zip tied the heater hose wrapping around the 5/16 hydraulic line, and then of course once I had one line in place, I zip tied the other line to it. Still got a little bit more past the front end here but it's very minor. And after this, all I got to do is just check for leaks once I get it going, once I get it filled back up.